Shavua Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Terumot. We're up to Perek Chet Mishnah Bet. Today's Mishnot should be Leilinu Shmat, Neria ben Svedlana, Aranbai ben Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam beGan Eden, Amen. Having discussed in yesterday's Mishnah people who became disqualified from eating terumah, today's Mishnah is going to discuss a case where such a person becomes ineligible to eat terumah while terumah is in his mouth. The Mishnah says v'chulam, and all of them, meaning a woman who was married to a Kohen and gets divorced or widowed, and a slave of a Kohen who leaves the Kohen's possession, shaita terumah betoch pihem, who had terumah in their mouths when they became disqualified to eat terumah. And the Farshim explain the woman becomes widowed. She became widowed or divorced or the slave of the Kohen's possession while he or she had terumah in their mouth. Rabbi Eliezer says, they should swallow the terumah in their mouths, because since they put it in their mouths permissibly, they may swallow it. And the Mepharshim explain, according to Rabbi Eliezer, if a person begins to eat terumah with permission, he may swallow it even if he becomes disqualified while he is eating. And the Mepharshim explain, apparently you see in Rabbi Eliezer's opinion that whenever a person starts eating something permissibly, he may continue eating it even if it becomes forbidden. Now, since this person is allowed to swallow the terumah, he is in fact obligated to swallow the terumah, because if he spits it out, it will become ruined since no one else will eat it after it was in his mouth, and it is forbidden to waste or destroy terumah. But Rabbi Eliezer agrees that if a Kohen had terumah in his mouth and then found out that his mother was a divorcee and he was a disqualified Kohen, he was a halal, like we spoke about in yesterday's Mishnah, he may not swallow what is in his mouth, because since he had never actually since he was never actually an eligible Kohen, he had never been allowed to eat terumah, and he had no right to put it in his mouth in the first place. The Rabbi Yeshua says, they must spit it out since they are now forbidden to eat terumah. Now the Mishnah discusses a similar case, one that involves an ordinary Kohen who was allowed to eat terumah. Amru lo nitmeta, if terumah was in a Kohen's mouth and people said to him, you became tameh after you put the terumah in your mouth, v'nitmet terumah, or they said the terumah became tameh after you put it in your mouth, which the Mefarshim explain, a tameh person is forbidden to eat terumah, and no one may eat terumah that is tameh. Rabbi Eliezer says, Yivla, he should swallow the terumah since he began eating it permissibly. The Rabbi Yeshua but Rabbi Yeshua says, he must spit it out. Tameh ha'ita, a Kohen eating terumah was told you were tameh before you put the terumah in your mouth. Utme'ah ha'ita terumah, or the terumah was tameh before you put it in your mouth. Onodashu tevel, or any person, even Israel, put food in his mouth and it became known that the food was tevel. U'maaser rishon shelo yitla tumato, or maaser rishon whose terumat maaser had not been separated, which we said maaser rishon may not be eaten until terumat maaser is separated from it. U'maaser sheni v'ekdesh shelo nivdu, or maaser sheni, or consecrated food that had not been redeemed, all of which are forbidden for anyone to eat. O shetam tam pishpesh toch piv, or a Kohen was eating terumah and sensed the taste of a bedbug, which has an especially foul taste in his mouth, and therefore does not want to swallow the terumah. In all of these cases, all Tanaim agree as a float, he should spit out the food, because where the food is forbidden, he must spit it out, because he was not allowed to put it in his mouth in the first place. And in that case, everyone agrees that he may not swallow it. When he tastes a bedbug, he may spit it out, because a person is not obligated to eat terumah that has a disgusting taste. And the Foshim explain, even though it is usually forbidden to waste terumah, a Kohen is not obligated to eat it if it disgusts him. And then the Foshim explain, the Rambam explains, the food does not actually contain a bedbug, because if it did, it would be forbidden to swallow. You don't have to tell me a Mishnah yiflotu. Rather, it would be forbidden due to the prohibition of eating bugs. It's simply, the Mefarshim explain, has a foul taste similar to that of the bedbug. And the same would apply to any foul taste. That's why the Mishnah used the language of bedbug. And in the previous cases, Abotai, the Rav tells us, Malachak Rabbi Yeshua, the Halakha follows the opinions of Rabbi Yeshua and not Rabbi Eliezer. That is in Rabotai Mishnah Bet. Mishnah Gimel now is going to cite another machloket between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Generally, from when produce is plucked until it is brought into the house, a person may eat it casually, meaning he eats it as a snack, not as a meal, even if it was not tied. You didn't remove the masrot yet. Once the produce is brought into a house or a courtyard, it may not be eaten at all until it's tied. In addition, once Shabbat arrives, a person may not even snack from produce that is still in the field. The Mefarshim explain that the Mishnah is going to cite a dispute now related to his halachot. If someone was snacking from a cluster of untied grapes in a garden, and while he was eating, he went with the grapes from the garden to the courtyard, Rabbi Eliezer says, Yigmor, he may finish eating the cluster without tithing it, because although generally once produce is brought into a courtyard, it may not be eaten at all until it's tithed. He may continue eating these grapes because he started eating them outside the courtyard where it was permitted. However, the Mefarshim do point out he may not eat the grapes inside the courtyard. He has to take them back outside the courtyard and finish eating them there. And the reason for this is because the only reason he can finish the grapes is that eating the whole cluster is considered a continuation of the original act of eating, which was permitted. But we can view it this way only if he finishes eating it in the same place where he began. If he eats the rest of the cluster in the courtyard, what he eats there will be considered a new act of eating, for which the courtyard will set the maaser obligation. The Rabbi Yeshua, but Rabbi Yeshua disagrees. He says, Lo yigmor, he may not finish eating the grapes once he brings them into the courtyard unless he tithes them, which the Mefarshim point out. Even if he takes the grapes back outside the courtyard, he may not eat them at all. And the Mefarshim point out, again, just like we said in the previous Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer holds that when a person starts eating something in a permissible manner, in a permitted manner, he may finish eating it even if it becomes prohibited, whereas Rabbi Yeshua holds he may not finish. Shabbat, someone who was snacking from untithed grapes on Friday when it grew dark and Shabbat night began. Rabbi Yeshua says, Yigmor, he may finish the cluster without tithing it. Although untithed produce becomes forbidden to eat when Shabbat starts, this person may finish the cluster that he began permissibly. Rabbi Eliezer says, Lo Yigmor, he may not finish eating the cluster until he tithes it. The opinions actually here, interesting enough, they flip. The Mefarshim explain that according to Rabbi Yeshua, he may not eat the grapes on Shabbat. He must save them until after Shabbat. When Rabbi Yeshua says Yigmor, he may finish it. He may not finish it on Shabbat. He has to eat it after Shabbat, because since there is a mitzvah to eat on Shabbat, whatever a person eats on Shabbat has special significance and cannot be considered a mere snack. Therefore, it is always forbidden to eat untithed produce on Shabbat itself. Whereas Rabbi Eliezer said he may not eat the grapes even after Shabbat until he tithes it. And the Mefarshim point out that our text follows the standard version of the Mishnah. However, according to this version, like we just said, we pointed out that it's opposite opinions. The opinions of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua are reversed from their own positions in the previous Mishnah and the earlier Mishnah. So because of this, many versions of the Mishnah, including the one cited in Masechet Beitzah, page 35a, and the Yerushalmi here, they reverse the opinions to make this case consistent with the previous cases. Meaning, Rabbi Eliezer holds that the person may continue eating, and Rabbi Yeshua holds that the person may not continue eating, just like they held in the previous cases, which is why I told you it was interesting enough here that it was flipped. We're following the way it's written here, but again, many versions change this wording in the Mishnah to flip it to make it consistent with the previous cases. That is in Rabotai today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.